there are some outliers in history who end up breaking social norms and shaping society as we know it. We know some outliers that are pretty famous, like Oprah, Gandhi, or even Hitler. They can influence society for better or worse, profoundly and irreversibly. Someone who's influenced society personally or influenced my life would be Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And his campaign against or for black-white equality. He was such a great success because of his oratory skills, his big speeches, his leadership in different corporations, and basically situationally, he was the best person for the job. Um, he was the best person for the job since his childhood. He was unlikely, black people were unlikely to be educated back then, but he had educated parents and he ended up going to college for his doctorate, which positioned him immediately to be in leadership for his race because that was pretty uncommon, I would say. And he was raised in the South, which was a very segregated community, and he ended up going to school in the North, so he had perspective on both the segregated community and the northern community where people live together, black and white people go to church together, it's less segregated to say. So he had perspective on what life could be if it was like racism wasn't such a big factor. So that helped him out a lot. And also he practiced nonviolence in his preaching. He was a big participant in the ministry during his college career. So all of this just sort of made him on this platform of like an ideal black citizen, and people caught on to that fairly quickly. This translated into his career directly because right after college he became a leadership of some associations. The big one being, or his first big leadership thing was becoming a preacher in Boston, and then he became a leader of the Montgomery Improvement Association. The Montgomery County was where Rosa Parks was boycotting the bus system and when she got arrested. So like a year after that happened, they created this association so they could have like a centralizing force of these boycotting and nonviolent protestings. And he ended up being the leader of it because they seemed if this were to go down, his reputation or the reputation of leading this association wouldn't really harm his career because he was educated. That was the original reason for hiring him. But he ended up proving his prowess and oratory skills and ended up making the association a huge success. People caught on to this quickly, and he became friends with many other powerful speakers. One of them being Mr. Rustin, who created a paper on, well, he called it the papers, on how the MIA Association, which is Montgomery Improvement Association, could be translated to incorporating a lot of other Southern communities. And he ended up following through, Martin Luther King ended up following through with his papers and using his other associates in other counties and cities of the South, created the SCLC, which is the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And the SCLC acted as a parent corporation to every other county's boycotting institutions and social advocacy institutions. During the summit, the SCLC, he ended up doing many speeches around the southern part of the United States, and he gained a huge following. His following numbers improved steadily throughout his speeching career, so to speak, in the SCLC. And because it grew to such a big number, his message was spread throughout the country, influencing public opinion and then public policy from them. So some policies that were created 5 years after his installment in the institution, SCLC. In 1964, the Civil Rights Act was passed, banning discrimination in job selection, which was a huge deal. It was the first act that was pushed by the advocacy groups in the Southern Hemisphere, in the Southern United States. And then the next year, there was 2 other acts passed: the Immigration and Nationality Act and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The Voting Rights Act sort of seconded the 15th Amendment with the Black people's right to vote. by banning sort of like barriers for people, black people voting in the South that states have created, like IQ tests in order to vote, like being able to, well, having to pay in order to vote at the ballot station, which directly infringed people because black people made less money and they weren't allowed to go to certain institutions. And so then 3 years later, there was more acts like the Fair Housing Act, which banned discrimination in choosing who could live in the housing communities and different houses, complexes, and cities and stuff. Long after he died, unfortunately he was murdered. Long after he was murdered, his impact could still be visualized to today. His message is taught in school systems across the country. It's universalized, teaching how campaigning can affect the United States positively. There's lots of memorials. I think there's 900 streets named after him, which is a lot, and plenty of counties and schools. And all the impacts in the social rights advocate groups are still established to today that he founded. And all these social right groups and memorials and lessons that he's taught sort of speak volumes to the impact that his civil rights movement had. Now you guys can see how great an impact he had on black-white equality. And yeah, so we went over in my speech how he was positioned from the start to become a great leader and how he fulfilled his expectations and surpassed it by being an outlier in society, by putting his life on the line and supporting these movements. So outliers like this are born in every generation, right? So the person who's probably going to affect us next is probably being raised right now, so we should all be ready to support his or her movement when the time arises.
795.